Our last speaker this morning in this section is Tom Bosschaert, and he's going to talk about the power of multidisciplinary thinking. Please welcome Tom. Thank you.
Hello, how are you all? This is the last presentation. I'm not sure if you still have the energy and time in your mind to listen to what I have to say, but I hope you can. Just to get a feeling of who I'm talking to. Who here is from Europe? It's about half. Who's from Asia? Okay. And the United States? From Africa? Oh, that's too few. 3, 4. Australia? 1, 2. Awesome. South America? Also too few people. Okay, but an awesome group of people. Okay, well, I was asked to talk to you a little bit about multidisciplinary collaboration. That's a lot of difficult words in one sentence, but I hope I can show you a little bit what that means. I was also asked to talk to you a little bit about my personal story of how I got to be here. Well, if you want that, here we start. That's me. I grew up in a forest, pretty much this forest, in a small house. And only later I realized what that meant for me, how that has impacted the way that I think about how things are connected with each other, the way that they are in a forest, how everything is cycled, how everything is reused, how everything has a purpose, and there's both beauty and there's both difficulty and struggle at the same time. And it's a place that is in constant change and in constant flux, that is both highly complicated and essentially very simple in its primary functions. So I started out here, and well, I moved on and I learned a lot of stories from the television, from the newspaper, from how things were going very badly with the world, how a lot of people were hungry, a lot of people were suffering, a lot of people were unable to change their own position in life in order to improve the situation for their families, and that really hurt. So I started looking around to, what are these issues? So it's very easy to then make a big summary of all the problems of the world, and they range from poverty and social justice to ecological issues, financial structures that are failing. Well, we cannot go on. Something that I learned from the forest was that, as also John Muir is very adamant in pointing out, everything is connected. All these things are connected to one another. Food is one of the most basic and essential of these things, but it's also not a standalone thing. It's connected to the financial things, it's connected to the ecology, it's connected to architecture, engineering, to social entrepreneurship, to all those things that we're talking about now. What I also knew is that society wasn't able to cope with the complexity of these issues. The institutions, the governments weren't able to cope with it because of their, certain political issues. Institutions were too narrowly focused to be able to deal with these faceted issues. So I wanted to go and look and see if I can have a look at this and then move to a vision of what the future could be if we could actually understand how these things are related and work together as a group of people, all the institutions, all the disciplines, all that knowledge together, and move forward together. So I was 19 when I started this, and I started the company. How many, anyone 19 here? They're all older? Anyone younger than 19? Oh, you, 18? Awesome. Start your own company and do this. It's actually a non-profit, but it's run like a company. So I traveled to the United States and studied there. I traveled to Australia and studied there, to Asia, just to learn about these things. Built my own collective where about 30 people from all kinds of different disciplines were working together, and learned how to organize that, how to make people go from an idea to how to implement an idea and actually make it happen, and put their own energy and time and responsibility into it so that it would actually succeed and flourish. And if you fall, you get up and you try again and you try again. So I didn't do that by myself. I had a lot of help of a lot of really great people, and I'm not going to name them, and they're all pasty-faced white men, I know, but they were very, very important to me, and so I stand on the shoulder of giants in that case. So one of the primary questions for me in what I do and what we do as an organization, we're with about 30 people, operating for now about 15 years, is this one. How can we transform our cities, our companies, our society as a whole to become flourishing, so, you know, with everything that that word contains, and resilient, to be able to withstand, you know, sudden impacts and changes and so forth, without creating more problems. A lot of solutions that are out here now that are being promoted, both by NGOs and governments and by companies alike, if you really look at what they're doing, they're not necessarily just solving a problem, they may also be creating other ones. So the question is really, what kind of machine, what kind of organism do we need in order to tackle these questions? Now, well, that is when I founded this organization called Accept Integrated Sustainability. Absolutely impossible name, which we actually like because it's difficult and what we do is difficult. This is a nice excuse. This is our mission, creating the foundations for a sustainable society. Flat out. There's no profit motive involved. All this is something that really comes on the table every day, our focus. This is about the group of disciplines that we've combined within our organization. So of the 30 people, they fall in the ranges of these. And we get new ones and we swap out old ones as time goes by, depending on what we need. We are a group of people that are entirely independent from one another. Everyone is fully responsible for their own work. Absolutely. There's no hierarchy of any kind. There's just a set of rules. There are people that make the rules, and there are people that basically play the game. But the people that make the rules don't get to tell the people that play the game how to play the game. They play the game, and people that make the rules, it's entirely separated. So what really brings us together is symbiosis in development. And that's a methodology that we've developed in order to speak the same language together and to actually be able to move from these theoretical components all the way down to action. So this group of people kind of looks like this. So there's a lot of variety, and we work in a lot of multidisciplinary settings. And then we use elements from the methodology to figure out ways how to address every single component of society in all these layers, all the way from energy, materials, and ecosystems, all the way down to personal health and happiness. We use systems analysis to figure out what the impact of an action is as a response to things not just one step away, but trickling down in time and space as that decision has influence on other decisions. Not to be able to predict, but just in order to understand what the nature is of the system, how it behaves, and how we can maybe learn from it and adapt it and find these triggers that make very big changes with very little effort possible. And then we use these innovation labs where we put different disciplines together and go through a very methodological cycle in order to come up with solutions. So these solutions are currently we're working all over the world, and there are some organizations that we do. And I just wanted to highlight the kind of stuff that we really want to focus on. So we work on what we call urban renaissance. It's completely redeveloping existing neighborhoods, not building new ones, but existing ones that really need time and attention. Social housing districts, Detroit, for instance, where we're working with Recovery Park in order to just make that city flourishing again. We work on buildings to recondition buildings and to give them new purposes. We work on software to accelerate these working processes and to understand better these systemic effects that we do. We work to help businesses to do the same, to move forward, innovate faster, and to analyze sustainability and implement it. We work on agricultural systems to provide food, but also energy and social aspects. And then we work with a lot of people to kind of permeate this way of working, way of thinking. So just wanted to focus on some of the agricultural and ecological projects very shortly. It's one of the first projects that we've ever done in 2001, Meriden Health Industries. was in Australia, in a small town called Merredin. That's, anyone? No, no one has heard of this, I think. Yeah, you've heard of it? Very good. Well, it's a very small town that looks kind of like this. It's a town that's there just for logistical purposes on the way to the gold mine. Well, to make a long story short, this town was really faltering. Economically, socially, environmentally. They had a lot of saltwater, groundwater issues. They had a lot of poverty, a lot of unemployment. What we did using that system is find a way to turn all those negative things into a resource and then finding one little catalyst to turn them around and turn it into a positive thing. After a long search, we found that catalyst, and that catalyst is, in this case, a spirulina algae. And spirulina used that salty groundwater and the sunlight and the cheap land and the labor to create a biological, sustainable industry that returned on its investment very shortly and created a lot of prosperity for town. So, well, that's the kind of the cycle that it goes through. So that's just one example. Here's another example. In the center of San Francisco, there was a big old terminal, bus terminal, and we converted it into the world's largest ecological rooftop, which will be done in 2015, which is very exciting. The Shanghai Master Plan is also similar, using social resources in combination with finance, engineering, agriculture, and ecological resource management to create a self-permeating system that basically travels around the city and builds vertical farms that employs unemployed people from the countryside, produces a lot of fresh food for the immediate locality, filters the water, and creates also secondary infrastructure systems for bicyclists and pedestrians. Just, very short overviews of very complex problems. That's what that looks like. And then this is another urban renaissance project of a neighborhood in the Netherlands, social housing, that's quite, in a poor condition. We worked with the people. We always work with the stakeholders locally and the people, and they're the driving force behind basically all the input that we get. And then basically created a completely closed loop energy, materials, water, waste cycle system on a resource level. And every single component in that has a social and a financial resource so that it really comes from within that neighborhood. This program is running now, so this is what it looked like a couple of years ago. This is an idea of what it will look like later, so where all the roads have been converted to agricultural productivity. The houses have been reconditioned in order to be entire energy neutral and so forth. Here's a market. But here's interesting, so this is going on now. This is 2 years into the program, and the first urban gardens are starting to sprout up for the elderly, and there's a restaurant that's now using all the food that's being created. Okay, so just the last thing that I wanted to leave you with is the Polydome project, and I can't tell you everything about this because my time is up. But it's very exciting. It is our answer to how to feed 9 billion people, which is the question that you'll be dealing with in a couple of minutes. It's basically moving away from monocultures to polycultures. I think Daniel mentioned agroforestry. That's one of those polycultural developments. But what we've done is we've taken it a step further. We've analyzed more than 500 different plants and species and bacteria and so forth in order to find symbiotic relationships between them, and then created basically a system that allows you to design an agricultural system. So it's not one solution, it's a method that arrives at a solution. And it can look like this, it can look like anything, but it has a higher yield than normal greenhouse agriculture, which is the most productive that we have. It uses no fertilizer, it uses no pesticides. It can be used for social development as well. And we're looking at building the first couple of pilot plants in Britain and in the United States in the next 2 years. Now, if you want to know more about this, the entire book of Polydome, with all the first research that was done, is completely published for free and rights free, so you can use it for anything that you want on our website. So do that and spread the word. And with that, here's a tower that uses the same polyculture system, so it can be used in any possible way. And with that, I'm just going to skip these things. Just some last thoughts. Really try to embrace complexity in anything that you do. Don't try to simplify things. Maybe simplify your message, don't simplify the problem. Simplify the way that you work with people, get rid of all those contracts and the patents and so on. Make it as easy as possible for anyone to adopt whatever you do, and then embrace the complexity of the real world in order to generate the extra input that you need to move forward. Always choose diversity over simplicity. Diversity in people, diversity in how you approach the world, how you interconnect with people, and find those hidden values in the system. Thank you.